to basically double it out. We can't make it all the way to $5,000. We're still, on average, we're talking on average. So if the student's eligible to get up to $5,000, they will get up to $5,000. But on average, average Cal Grant B recipient should be getting close to $3,000 instead of $1,500 per year. And moving over to transparency, the first bill in there is AB 233, and you'll see all these 4 bills are from Assemblymember Qualified Custer's office. And the reason is that he actually came out with a bill package. It's called Student Bill of Rights, and I guess you can comment on near the end, but I'm briefly touch on it too. So we're trying to host a campus rally. We're inviting the Assemblymember to talk about this bill. So again, we can get the word out there to get more students to attend the rally so they can sign the petitions and actually understand what's going on at the Capitol. So with that, we'll get started with his list of bills. The first one is 233. It kind of deals with the wage garnishment issue. So right now, as you saw in the video, so if a person who has taken out step back. So private loans don't have the same flexibility as federal loan has. So with federal loans, if you have some hardship, you can defer your payment, or you can choose to go on an income-based repayment plan, which is they take a look at how much money you make and see how much money you need to take care of your day-to-day activities, or have a decent living standard, and any money that's that's beyond that. So then that they kind of look at it and see, okay, well, how much of that can we take away and go on an income-based repayment? That's the ideal. But with private loans, that option isn't available to the borrower, so they can't really go on to that. They can't research and say, well, this is what it choose to be. So let's say if they're not able to make a payment under the current law, the lender can call up the borrower's employer and say, well, this person is not making back the payments, and they can ask the borrower, or they can ask the employer of the borrower to withhold up to 25% of their wages. So let's say someone is making $10 an hour, so they only get paid $7.50 an hour instead of the entire $10. And the remaining $2.50 are given directly to the lender, which kind of goes back into paying the principal or interest on the loan. So what this does is it prohibits that practice of having the lender call the employer directly and say, hey, this person is not making money, and start withholding the wages. The intention of this is to encourage the two parties to actually sit down and negotiate and see what's the better way for the borrower to make repayments on the money they lent out. Again, right now, under the current bankruptcy laws, you can't really discharge a student debt. So again, that way you have to make the payment back. It's a matter of sitting down and negotiating a deal, how it could be returned back to the lender. That's the first one on this bill package. Then we have AB 391. I'll let Natasha talk about that one.
Okay, this is a bill by It's about transparency, and basically they want to amend the current K-12 education to include personal finances. So that includes, but not limited to, budget and managing your credit debt. And how they're going to do is that the Instructional Quality Commission is going to identify curriculum, and they're going to identify resources and to assist educators in paying this forth, and it's going to be imposed as a state mandate program, which means that the state will have to pay for it.
Matthew, do you want to talk about that one?
Yeah, so for 534, it's going to require entrance and exit loan counseling before a student take out a loan. So in entrance counseling, it would be things like information on how interest grows, whether the student has used all their federal loan opportunities, likely consequences of paying off the loan. Exit counseling would be information on different payment plans, debt management strategies, tax benefits borrowers can get, more consequences of not paying off loans, and just information about grace periods and loan forgiveness. So this bill is really good because it does a good job of informing students of all the different things that might happen if they don't pay off the loan. We saw in the video that there's a lot of misinformation. People just didn't know what was going on when they were signing the loan, all the terms and conditions. So this bill does a good job of just explaining those things.
So
rather than have a, a computer program do that, you have actual people.
Yeah, it would be actual people. It would be the universities like ASUCD, yeah. That would be
I
doing
think
that.
right now the delivery method is still up to the institution, but right now we only have that kind of counseling for federal loans, not private loans. So when someone goes on a private loan, they do not get any sort of counseling in terms of what's the difference, what are terms and conditions of the loan. So the idea is to provide a similar counseling program for private loans as well. Now, how would that be delivered? I know at UC Davis we do an online program when we check out a federal loan, but there are some private institutions which provide in-person counseling on loans that students take out. So the delivery method is up to the college to decide on. And the last one on this list is AJR 11. AJR stands
Oh,
for...
one more thing about that, because I think it would be trying to encourage the universities to do in person. They can request a fee of up to $50 for doing the counseling, which seems a little, you gotta pay to like learn about your loans, but I think that would encourage like the in-person counseling, which would be more helpful.
So, so far, the previous two bills kind of dealt with just raising awareness among students, whether it be introducing financial literacy in K-12 curriculum or providing a counseling program. And the first one on this one is to kind of provide more consumer protection. And the last resolution, as we talked about earlier today, which was that the private student debt is non-dischargeable under current bankruptcy laws, and the state cannot ask or tell a bank what to do because of the interest and commerce clause. So at best, the California legislature can pass and resolutions. AJR is Assembly Joint Resolution number 11. But there is a parallel bill at the U.S. Congress which kind of deals with this sort of topic. And this just urges or encourages the President's office and the U.S. Congress to pass a legislation to make private student debt dischargeable in a bankruptcy case filed under Chapter 9 or Chapter 13 of the bankruptcy code. Which means if you're able to successfully declare bankruptcy, that person should be able to discharge their private student debt. Again, it only deals with the private student debt, not the federal debt. Federal debt is not dischargeable, and the argument is there are other flexibilities built into the federal debt which a person can opt for and still be able to pay back on their loan. And the private student loan system will have that flexibility built into it. So the next one, or last one under transparency on the next page is AB 1300. This is again a 2-year bill. There was a strong opposition from the credit card companies. So what this bill requires is if a credit card company is holding an event on campus where they're trying to solicit students to sign up for their credit cards, they should be required to orally disclose the terms and conditions of the credit card that a student is signing up for, and any fees associated with the credit card, like late payment fee and so on and so forth. So this is a 2-year bill right now, so the author's office is going back, and there's strong opposition saying the oral disclosure takes too much time and resources, and it's not just on the credit card companies to be put into that, to be asked to orally disclose all the terms and conditions because they change, and it's just too much to disclose in a one-on-one personal conversation. So the author's office is going back and trying to look at the bill language and coming up with a better language which serves the needs of both the credit card companies at the same time is able to provide education to the students or awareness among the students. So moving on to the next big topic, which is accountability. With AB 29, I'll let David talk about that one.
So AB 29 takes up to $152 million per year from the Clean Energy Job Fund that was created from Prop 39, and then that money is appropriated to CSUs and community colleges to just retrofit all their buildings to make them more energy efficient. And I think how the split goes is that UCs would get $70 million, and no more than $70 million allocated to the UCs, and yeah, that's about. I think that's something.
So the last one on there is SB 8. That was something, I think, Senator Yee's office, we have worked with this office for a long time, and they have proposed this bill multiple times over the past 5-6 years. And they introduced it this year, but they just had enough support, so they decided to withdraw the bill. The concept of the bill was to kind of place some kind of limits on the executive compensation, provided that if it provides some constraints to follow along with that one. So their rationale was if a university has decided to increase their system-wide fee in the previous 2 years, they should be providing more compensation to the executive personnel. Or if they have received lower funding from the state, the UCCSD and community colleges do receive funding from the state. In UC, I believe it's 35% of funding for UC comes from the state. If they've received a lower funding from the state than the previous year, then they shouldn't increase the executive compensation. Again, it makes sense. You have limited resources, and you want to spend them to what your original purpose was, which is to educate students. And then finally, they had so if if a university has decided to hire a new personnel in place of basically existing executive officer, the monetary compensation of the incoming officer should not exceed 105% of the previous officer in place. So the bonus shouldn't go beyond 5%. And they put a sunset date on this bill, which was this bill would all the provisions of this bill would repeat by January 1st, 2024. The idea was we recently went through an economic recession. We still are, you can decently argue that it's a recovery mode. We still can feel the impact of the recession to this day. So their idea was, well, by 2024, the economic circumstance would change, and maybe they can go back and revise if this bill is still necessary in that time. But again, the author's office did not receive enough support, so instead of making it go through the whole process, they decided to do the bills. I mean, 5 more bills. So these, if we can move over to the next handout. So as I said, there are a few bills which are still being considered by the ASUCD Senate, and they're still working on kind of finalizing whether or not they want to support that bill. So these 5 kind of highlight the bills which are still in process internally with the ASUCD. The first one under affordability is AB 1241.
So under 1241 by Weber's office, it allows you to be eligible for Pell Grant A and B, even if you want to take some time off after you graduate from high school. So say you want to take like 2 or 3 years off after you graduate, like you can still be eligible for the Pell Grant A and B entitlement award, and they won't take this away from you just because you take your time off and you're technically like not a first-year student, so they won't penalize you for extending the time that you want to have in between when you come to college. And because the first-year awards that you get when you are accessible, or when you do access the Pell Grant A and B, the first-year awards are a little bit higher than the second-year award and the third-year award. So, yeah. So basically, you get the same amount that the normal age freshman would get. And that's what it.
So next 2 bills under affordability, again, to deal with the Pell Grant funding. So AB 1285. Does anyone on this table receive Pell Grant B grants? You do?
No, I'm not sure actually.
All right, that's fine. So right now, if you are eligible for Pell Grant B funding, so you can only use that money, or 98% of the students who get that funding can only use the Pell Grant B funding to pay for non-tuition purposes, which would be cost of living, buying food on campus. So only 2% of the students have this eligibility or to be able to use funding from Pell Grant B to pay for their first-year college tuition fees. So what this bill does, it kind of lifts that 2% cap, which is, if you receive Pell Grant B funding, you should be able to use it however you feel necessary. So again, it's just saying, well, let's eliminate the 2% cap and allow all the Pell Grant B recipients to be able to use money to pay for tuition if they choose to do so. And next one is AB 1287. So again, over time, California legislature has been adding some provisions to the Pell Grant funding, which is kind of restricting the criteria or limiting the criteria for people who are eligible for Pell Grant funding. And recently the idea was, in addition to demonstrating that you have a financial need, you have to meet this statewide annual income and asset criteria, which ended up being that if you're, there's statistics out there, there are about 1,000 students, or there are a few thousands of students out there who whose family income just went by $1,000 on an annual basis, and they were ineligible for Pell Grant funding. So again, so this bill basically says, let's go reverse all those provisions and just make sure if you're able to demonstrate eligibility for Pell Grant funding in your first year, when you're renewing your Pell Grant funding, you should, the only thing you have to demonstrate is financial need, not necessarily you don't have to meet the original criteria, which was the annual income and the asset criteria. Again, it's providing and expanding access to Pell Grant funding to students. And with Pell Grant, it's more of a black and white approach. Either you are eligible or you aren't. There's a tiered approach to the system. So as I said, I think it's roughly 1,900 students when they did the statistics that whose family income went by $1,000 and they weren't able to access Pell Grant funding for that year. And that does impact a lot, in terms of how you plan to.
Basically, after first year, you don't have to provide proof of your annual income.
The only thing you have to do is demonstrate the financial need, I think, which is a federal requirement for any sort of state aid or federal aid. And moving down to the last two bills on the bill packet of transparency is AB 166 and AB 1162. Natasha.
Okay, so AB 166 is about expanding the definition of financial preparedness. And basically they want to install a new program in grades 7 through 12. And it's going to be about financial literacy, like we saw in the video. And the existing curriculum will be provided to instructors with no-cost materials and resources like web links and etc. to help them teach this material. And with this, they're going to ensure the history, social science framework for education is going to include financial preparedness in its curriculum.
Yeah, so for 1162, what it's trying to deal with is right now, some universities, when they give out their financial aid, they're giving it in the form, they're using a third party to give out the financial aid. And when, the third party can charge different fees, when students take out their money, like ATM fees and things like that. So what this bill does it encourages the UCs, CSUs, and CCCs to set up their financial aid in a way that would allow students to use their own bank accounts so they wouldn't be subject to the same kind of fees. So it also does things like doesn't let or encourages the CCCs, CSUs, and UCCs to not have co-branded debit cards. Yeah.
So again, the idea with the last bill there is to kind of increase awareness among students of what they're signing up for, what kind of services they're signing up for. So I guess with that, that's kind of the end of our bill package this year. So again, the first handout talked about the bills that have official support from the ASUCD Senate. We have been lobbying on these bills. And the second handout talks about the bills currently in the system, so we hope to put them on our bill package within a week or so. And with that, this kind of concludes the first session of the workshop here today, kind of talking about the legislative process, about the bill package. And now we have Mark and Paul from MB here today.
Hi.
Thank you for being here. I have seats for you guys here, so.
Can we sit near the fan?
Sure, if you wish to. So MB, as I said, they have been assisting us with developing political strategies. They have been providing us with background research on topics of interest. So we're always glad to have them here, have them help us out through the process. So today they're here to kind of talk about the current political climate at the Capitol, what's going to be happening in the next few weeks, and kind of lay out a lobbying strategy for lobbying for here today. So I just want to open it up to all the attendees of the workshop. So with that, I'll let you start.
Thank you. Thanks for having us back. I know we were out here, gosh, was it January?
I think it was
February? It might have been early.
I think it was November. So
Was it? Wow.
Yeah.
Time flies, yeah. Well, I think the reason I raised that is the world has changed significantly in California. I think the last 4 or 5 years we came out and spoke to your group. Our advice and our initial commentary was, oh my God, the state is going broke, there's no money. Don't even think about going over into the Capitol and asking for money because they're going to throw you out on your ear. Well, 2 things have happened that may or may not be related. Obviously, the first was the passage of Prop 30, which was a tax increase, which is going to provide additional funding over a number of years. And that was really a baseline that the governor proposed in terms of funding for higher education, particular UCs, so it obviously impacts you. Since that time, budget news has gotten significantly better, and I think the most recent number is the state is anywhere from $4.5 to $5 billion ahead of where they thought they were going to be over basically about an 18-month period. The numbers are kind of funky, and everything in government accounting is kind of funky, but essentially from January 1 to the current year and into the next year, the state has $5 billion more to spend. And obviously that impacts, I think, a lot of what you all are going to be facing when you get into the Capitol, and I think you're going to see a change in probably the emotional makeup of the building, and folks aren't worrying about where the next dollar is going to come from. And now you've seen the Capitol spin around now 180 degrees, and now the battle is, how do we spend all this money? And there's going to be a tension, there already is a tension between the governor, who wants to essentially not spend all the money on ongoing programs, and there are others in the legislature that want to backfill a lot of the programs that were cut the last few years. So that's the tension that you're going to see that's going to play out really over the next 4 to 6 weeks. So the first thing that's going to happen, and it's going to happen on Tuesday, is May revised budget. So that's sort of the last milestone in the budget process where numbers are published basically by government, Department of Finance, Legislative Analyst's Office, that says, okay, here's where we are, here's what's going to happen, we think, over the next 12 months into the next fiscal year. And that's going to be, I think, probably the most realistic number that shows just how much money the state has over and above what it had projected last year. And usually May revised kicks off, it used to be a couple of months of craziness because budgets were never signed on time. The law has changed now through an initiative that lowers the threshold. So essentially what you're going to get is probably about a 4 to 5 week period of craziness. That's all going to be budget related, and how do you spend all the money and all the new money that's coming in. Now how that impacts your bill package is sort of a long wind up here for the pitch. You have, I don't know, half a dozen bills that are probably in appropriations suspense file right now.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And the reason they're in suspense is that the legislature has deemed that those bills somehow spend money. And there's a threshold on the Assembly side, I think it's $150,000 and up, and on the Senate side it's $50,000 and up, general fund, $150 all funds. Any bill that's determined to spend that amount of money goes into this suspense file in the Appropriations Committee. And kind of the joke around the Capitol is that suspense is where good ideas go to die quietly. Because it's an automatic thing that happens. If the bill has a cost attached to it, it goes into suspense. There's very few exceptions. I mean, it's kind of an extraordinary circumstance, and I don't know that any of the bills on your list are kind of fall into the extraordinary circumstance list.
There was, I think, De Leon's bill. That's made this. That's actually going to be third list.
So, what's going to happen is, I think it's May 24th is the deadline to move everything out of Appropriations Committee. So what happens is that week, the week of May 24th, Appropriations Committees on both sides, Senate and Assembly, sit down and meet. And it's basically, what they call it, horse trading. So there's this big pile of bills that all have a cost attached to them. And all the authors run in there and try to get their bills off the suspense file. Legislative leadership, and how this ties back to the budget, legislative leadership is going to give the Appropriations Committee chairs a dollar figure, and essentially it's like an open to buy. You have $300 million to go spend on bills. Have fun. You know, whether it's 300 million or not, I don't know, but because the budget's better, the number will probably be bigger than it has been the last few years, and that's good, right? I mean, that's good if you're one of the authors that has one of these bills. All that's going to be happening, like I said, in the next 2 weeks. So we spoke yesterday about lobbying strategy and what your group should be doing going forward. And, you know, basically the only thing you probably ought to be doing the next couple of weeks is working the appropriations committees to try to get those bills off suspense. And the other, and it's not a secret, the appropriations committees, just like the legislature, just like California now, from a political perspective, is obviously supermajority Democratic. So we spent some time yesterday talking about who should you go see. I'd go see Democratic members of the Appropriations Committee. Start with the committee chairs. The only probably office I would go to on the Republican side would be the vice chairs. I think that's with Mimi Walters and I forget who's over on the Assembly side. Oh yeah, Diane Harkey. Well, that's interesting. They cover the same part of California. They're both in Newport Beach, I think. The other thing I would strongly suggest is getting back in contact, and I know you're talking to your authors' offices, so Wachowski, I know, is author of 4 or 5 of your bills. I think you can not only show your sort of sophistication as an organization, but also really, you know, bolster your relationship with these authors' offices by basically going into all of them if they have bills on suspense, and just ask them, what can we do to help you get this bill out of Appropriations Committee and onto the floor? And they may say, you know, it's kind of out of our hands. You know, our elected official, you know, Assembly member Wachowski's got to go do his horse trading with the speaker, and that's something that none of us are really involved in, and so thanks for coming in, but it's out of our hands. Or they might say, boy, we're really close. We think we're going to get this bill off suspense and get it moving onto the floor, but there's this one member on the Appropriations Committee that we're not sure we have him or her locked down to move the bill out. Could you go in and visit them, right? So the author's offices can help you, right, set your lobbying strategy over the next couple of weeks. So I would, again, strongly suggest you spend your time targeted that way, as opposed to, you know, kind of where you start at the beginning of the year, where it was kind of you go down the list and you meet a lot of people, and there's Education Committee and all these other committees, and all the time for that, at least for the next couple of weeks, is past. And that's kind of where you go, and that's going to kind of determine what happens for the next few